All right, so I don't really know where to start. I'm just going to start yapping. So the big thing really is just after, after pushing 15 years in this industry, you start to pick up on a lot of trends. And the big thing is, like, when I first started out as a contest prep coach specifically, there was only a handful of people, even in St. Louis, where I live, that were offering it. It was just not a common thing. As the sport kind of evolved and grew and the industry grew, obviously more people started coming into the space and becoming contest prep coaches. It was literally, like I said, when I very first started, there was like 3 or 4 of us in the entire city of St. Louis. Since then, I'm the only one of those 3 or 4 that are even still doing it or involved in the sport, literally in any capacity. And in the almost 15 years that I've been doing it, there's just constantly cycles of new people emerging in the industry and then people dying out of the industry, basically completely getting to the point where they're completely irrelevant, and then they just exit the space and go do something else. They recognize, like, I'm not getting any clients anymore no matter what I do. I don't want to put in the work to, 1, get better as a coach, but 2, get better at running the business so that I, am able to attract more clients and generate more leads and make enough money to sustain doing it. And so they exit and they go do something else where they can, make money more easily or whatever. That's always what it is. So what that tells me is staying power is very, very difficult in the bodybuilding industry because you have to actually be really, really good at what you do. And very few people actually are. The truth of the matter is, when you don't really know what you're doing yet and you're new to the sport, the concept of coaching is a really attractive thing. 1, because it just seems like a cool job. You get to work for yourself. You get a little bit of clout in the industry. Like, if you have the knowledge necessary to get people on stage and have them look good and win shows and stuff like that, that's like a really rewarding thing. And I think you get a lot of recognition for it, and people are very attracted to that recognition. That's like what social media is just a way for people to get recognition constantly. And so it's like a cool job that comes with a lot of clout. They assume that there's quite a bit of money to be made in it because the outliers in the industry do make a lot of money, like a shitload of money. The average person in the industry makes very little money, like hardly enough to actually sustain an average lifestyle in America. But again, because you see those outliers and they're making really good money, they're like, oh shit, if they can do it, I can do it. It's just bodybuilding. My coach gave me a diet and I followed it and did well. Therefore, I can obviously just duplicate that with a bunch of people. That's kind of the perception. And then the big thing is that they just assume that it's like kind of an easy job as well. So people get into coaching and then they kind of, within the first few years, recognize that this is really not what I thought it was. The recognition becomes a lot less relevant to you the older you get. It's really not that exciting anymore. It's not what you should be doing it for in the first place, obviously. 2, you start to notice that what you thought you knew, like back when you thought you knew everything, if you're not familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, this is what I'm talking about. Just Google that and you'll understand. In the very beginning, you're extremely confident in your knowledge of what you're doing and the things that you're deploying and implementing. You think you fucking know everything. And then very quickly you start to recognize, like, as you learn more and more and more, you start to recognize that, like, oh shit, I don't know anything. I don't know nearly as much as I thought I did. And in order to keep up with, the market standard, if I want to be one of those outlier coaches that makes a lot of money and does really well and gets a lot of clout and recognition, I got to learn a lot more stuff. And people are just not willing to put in the time and effort to understand this type of stuff. Some people just are not equipped with the neurological capacity to do it, even if they want to and are willing to put in the work. Like, you actually just have to be like an intelligent person, right? That doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Like, what's the biggest priority? Like, to be a great coach, what's the number one attribute? People are going to say all kinds of different things, but the answer is intellect, general intellect. And like, a good portion of the people that are trying to do it just don't have that. And if you don't have that, none of the other stuff is really going to get you very far. So there's that component. There's a lot of different components of it. The problem is marketing is it's social media. Everyone's on social media all day long. It's all there. It's all in your face. The way the algorithm is set up right now, it's very easy to be in front of a lot of people. So there's a lot of people who've learned how to do the marketing because that's a little bit easier than everything else, I would say. Not that I'm the best at it. I'm actually not very good at it. I need to be much better at it. But learning how to do that's easier, and there tends to be a quicker, immediate reward from it money wise. And so that's what you get, is you get a bunch of people who are getting better and better and better at marketing, but they're still shit coaches. And so best case scenario, you get people who end up doing fairly well, see a little bit of success, make a little bit of money on the back of the marketing that they're doing, but they can't retain clients because they're just not that good at coaching. And the problem is, because the marketing is good, it's very difficult for the consumer, the athletes, the competitors, the clients, to distinguish who's good and who's not, right? So tons and tons of coaches that are, what I would call like Walmart coaches or cookie cutter, run-of-the-mill status quo coaches are getting, clients. And because they don't have anything to compare that to if they're new to the sport, they kind of just assume like this is what coaching is. And sometimes that burns people and they just have such a bad experience that they exit the sport. And it's like, again, me being in the position of a guy who's been in the industry a very, very long time, basically since like the inception of social media, at least as we know it today, and have seen all of the trends come and go and all of the different rounds of people who've entered the space, exited the space, new people entered and exited. They all position yourself as competition to you, they all want to compare themselves to me, and they all want to put themselves in the same room as me and assume that they're as good or better than me. And then, like I said, like 3-4 years later, they're like selling insurance or whatever. And people ask me, like, what's the differentiator? The differentiator is knowledge and the ability to apply that knowledge to individuals. And it's a very, very difficult thing to portray from a marketing perspective, social media perspective. It's a very difficult thing to do. Because it's not as obvious as just transformations. I have a million transformations. Even the bad coaches have a lot of transformations, good transformations. Because at the end of the day, a transformation can be incredibly misleading. A transformation photo or video or whatever, if it's just a sample size of 3-4 months and you just slammed that person with a bunch of gear, or I won't even go down that road. Let's just eliminate that. Let's say they're natural. And you just put that person on 900 calories a day, chicken, broccoli, rice, repeat, Stairmaster, repeat, tons and tons of cardio, 5 or 6 day a week, high volume, training split, which is basically the formula for like 99% of coaches. I just told you. Chicken, rice, treadmill or Stairmaster, 5-6 days a week, high volume. And then generally speaking, when that stuff starts to run its course, it's up the doses. Again, I won't even mention all that. You're going to get results with that. Either way, that's the thing. If you can get somebody to follow a protocol like that, you're going to get results. That's why most people do it, is because it's guaranteed. If you just eat this low amount of calories from chicken and rice, it's very predictable. And if you go do a ton of cardio, you have to lose fat because you're just expending so much energy. And if you train doing 7, 8, 9 different exercises per workout 5 to 6 times a week and all this different volume that I'm throwing at you, like, it has to elicit a response. It has to. And the answer, and the fact of the matter is, it does. Like, it is going to elicit a response. And the more genetically gifted that client is, the bigger that response is going to be. Even if they're not very genetically gifted, you're going to get a response, and you can get a before and after photo, right? Like, you can get your transformation and post it, and then people see that and don't know what went on behind the scenes, that person's psychological state, stress levels, sleep quality, appetite, how much they really had to jam a square peg through a round hole to make that short window of a transformation actually happen. They also don't know how much better could that transformation have been if things were done differently. So again, you can see how this stuff becomes really misleading. And so when I compare what I'm doing to what the rest of the market is doing, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to position myself as the only good coach. That's not at all what I'm saying. However, vast majority of the industry, it's very easy to observe what they're doing. I just told you. Like, if you guys want a rundown of what 90% of coaches are doing, they're going to give you chicken, broccoli, rice, Stairmaster or treadmill, 5 to 6 days a week, high volume, period. That's what you're going to do. The chances are you're probably already doing some version of that. Sans the diet, you're probably doing everything else, or at least you know that you're going to be doing those things if you're dieting for prep. And the fact of the matter is, you just have somebody holding your hand and holding you accountable, or at least we hope. A lot of times you don't even get responses from these people. But again, I'm not even going to go down that road. I think people have gotten a little bit better about that because too many people have been exposed. Then you factor in, like, how is it being delivered? Like, what does the fulfillment look like? Are you getting a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet? nothing wrong with that. Like, that works if that works for you. But if there's ways to make the process more efficient, I think coaches should be doing it, because it's going to get you better results. It's going to get your client better results. You're going to get better retention of clients and way more referrals from those clients. So either way, but when people ask me to kind of compare what I'm doing to what the rest of the industry is doing, in private conversations, it's really easy to portray. It's very simple. Granted, it's also very in-depth. There's a million different components of it. Like, you kind of have to just try it to understand there's a big, big difference. There's a really big difference. The chicken and rice coaches are going to be a thing of the past. Like, eventually this is going to get exposed, and people are going to not. They're going to hire 4 straight coaches that all give them the exact same thing, because that's kind of what most of the coaching industry is. And they're going to start to recognize, like, dude, I already know what all these coaches are doing and what they're going to say. I don't even need a coach at this point. Or they're going to hire somebody who goes further in depth. So the thing that's missing from the coaching industry to a large degree is that the focus is exclusively on what can I give them to force them to jam a square peg through a round hole that's going to make the results the most predictable possible, so that I have to do the least amount of work possible and still get that transformation from them. That's generally been the approach. That's generally the approach in the industry. That's not the case for me at all. Like, I look at things far further in depth than that. Like, I take into consideration the individual's circumstances. Does this person travel a lot? Does this person expend a lot of energy to do the work that they do on a daily basis? Do they have a family? Do they have kids? Do they have lots of obligations and scheduling conflicts or an unpredictable daily schedule? Things like that, because you can, like, literally right there, I can tell you how I would approach I don't even give people cardio. First of all, that's another thing, is there's so much stuff being utilized in the coaching industry that's just unbelievably archaic. It's just that nobody knows it's archaic because nobody will deviate from it. It's just what everyone has always done, and therefore coaches are unwilling to deviate from the standard procedure that everyone's used since the beginning of time. Like, I mean, think about like horse and buggy. For the longest time, that was how people got from point A to point B, horse and buggy, until somebody invented the car. And it was like, actually, we have a way more efficient way to do this now. You probably have tons of people who were really resistant to it at first, and probably didn't take the automobile seriously. And then the next thing you know, eventually the automobile breaks through and everyone's like, wow, I'm not doing this stupid horse and buggy shit ever again, because I can just do a car now. And I think we're at a tipping point in the industry where that's starting to happen. This like chicken rice repeat diet, and this it's fasted cardio, 45 minutes, Stairmaster 6 times a week, cardio protocol, outdated, old. No one's going to be doing it anymore. The training, the real high volume stuff, like the training data is really complex. It's really complicated. It's really difficult to contextualize for the individual. But the fact of the matter is, when you put most of this stuff into context, you quickly start to learn that a lot of volume is totally unnecessary for almost everybody. And in fact, is the reason that most people are not getting good enough results, because they're just doing too much stuff. Then you take the super high volume training, the super strenuous cardio protocols, the insanely restrictive diets all together at the same time. Now you've got insane time commitments. You're not enjoying anything about your food. You're radically lacking in dopamine production as a result of it. You're running your body into the ground. So yeah, you might be burning more calories in the moment, but your cortisol is so high, energy compensation gets ramped up so high that you're actually not burning any more calories for a day than you would be if you just didn't do any cardio. Literally, by the way, that's factually true. Sleep quality turns to shit. You got people constantly talking about, my digestion's really bad. I wake up bloated every morning. I have inflammation. I have all these issues. And the craziest thing is, it can all be solved in the simplest ways ever. It costs no money whatsoever. It requires no drugs. It requires no supplements. Now, let me be clear. I'm not against peptides. I use PEDs with all of the clients that want to. I use supplements in areas where I think it can provide a benefit. But the fact of the matter is, most of the problems that people are having that don't show up in a transformation photo are things that can just be solved with a little bit more logical nutrition protocol, cardio protocol, or eliminating a cardio protocol, reducing training volume, and getting way more output out of it. You know, and I think one of the biggest issues with the fitness industry as a whole, and especially bodybuilding, is that it's always been an industry that prides itself on hard work. That's a good thing. Hard work, you'll never hear me say hard work is a bad thing. Of course, hard work is the most important thing probably that exists on planet Earth. However, if that's your only focus, what tends to happen, and what is happening and has always been happening, and especially in bodybuilding, but in fitness in general, is people are doing too much work allocated to a bunch of areas that actually aren't beneficial at all. The analogy I use all the time is you got a bunch of people working 80 hours a week to get paid for 40. And they take pride in the hard work. People love to be victimized by the amount of work that they do. And if all that work is paying off to the highest degree possible, I'm all for it. I'll work 24 hours a fucking day if it's going to give me that much more output. But that's not how it works, ever in any industry, by the way. Right? That's not how it works. Think about like studying for a test. This was something I recognized all the way back in like high school and college. You have the friends that were the big overachievers that would pull all-nighters studying for an exam. And I would always be like, but you're not even sleeping? And if you're not sleeping, you're not going to retain hardly any of that shit. And so you spent a bunch of time studying for that test, but you're not able to retain any of that information because you got no sleep. I'm going to study a fraction of the amount of time as you, and I'm going to get my 8 hours of sleep before my test. And despite the fact that you worked infinitely harder than me, I'm probably going to get a better grade than you. It's the same way with fitness. Like everyone wants to pride themselves on my hour of fasted cardio first thing in the morning at 5 a.m. before everyone else was even awake, and eating nothing but chicken and broccoli for 16 straight weeks, and training 7 days a week, 2-a-days, or 6 days a week with all this volume. And I puked after every leg day, and I was chronically sore from one leg day to the next. And every time I sat down on the toilet, I had to, slowly lower myself down. Otherwise I was going to fall because I couldn't hold myself up because I was so sore. It's like people love to brag about that stuff. People love to take pride in all that stuff. Almost all of that stuff I look at and I'm like, that's an idiotic way to do it. That's because you are doing it that way, you are sacrificing results on the back end. And the only argument anyone ever has is, but look at my results. How can you argue with my results? Or even worse, and probably even more common, they point to an elite pro bodybuilder, a genetically completely unrealistic version of what we're talking about. Someone who's an unbelievable hyper responder to training, unbelievable hyper responder to nutrition, unbelievable hyper responder to drugs that they're still probably using far more than you. And so everything those guys do works. So if they're training the same way you are and doing cardio and nutrition the same way you are and getting really incredible results, of course, I'm not surprised. They probably could have gotten away with doing a fraction of it and gotten just as good, in some cases, probably many cases, better results, but their results are so good that you can't argue with them because they're the best in the world anyway, right? So that's why my content is never really targeted at the genetic elite. Does it apply to them? Of course. Most of the genetic elite are doing things that I would call far below optimal, but because they're so genetically elite, it doesn't really matter. And so me trying to get through to them in my content, it's not even worth my time. Would I love to take those people as clients and prove to them that what I'm doing would work better than what they're doing? Yes, of course. Not for my ego, because I want to benefit them, and I think it'd be great for me as well. But my messaging is to basically everybody below the genetically elite. People who have good genetics are in that category too, but the further you go down the spectrum of quality in genetics, the more optimization becomes necessary. So the shit that you hear about Nick Walker doing doesn't automatically mean that it's relevant to you, because genetically you are on far opposite ends of the spectrum. You need optimization. People like Nick Walker can literally do anything and get unbelievable results. And I don't know why I'm using him specifically as an example. Name any top elite Olympia caliber pro. Same thing, right? You look at Derek Lunsford, he won the Olympia and didn't even show up in anywhere near his best shape. How good of genetics could you possibly be? Could you possibly have, where you can show up at 75% and still be the best in the world according to the judges on that day? Tell me that he really needs optimization. No, none of these guys need optimization. Stop looking at them and doing what they do, monkey see, monkey do, typical bodybuilding shit, because doing what they do is irrelevant. Everything they do works. So it's misleading. Just because it works for them does not mean that it will work for you. And 9 out of 10 times, it definitely will not work for you. Or if it will, when I say work, you'll get results, but results that are leaving tons and tons of progress on the table. And again, that's just a message that's very difficult to get across because, I have my own personal anecdotes, and I can tell you, like, doing a fraction of the work is going to elicit as good or better results. And the work that you are doing, you actually have so much more in the tank that you can actually work harder. So if anyone wants to claim that I'm just trying to find shortcuts and do this the easy way, I'm sorry, that's not the case at all. The fact of the matter is we only have so much energy output available as human beings, right? And so if you're trying to dedicate 100% effort to these like stringent cardio protocols and these high volume training protocols, guess what? You're giving like 50% to each if you're doing everything at full capacity. Okay? So you're working more, but you're not working harder. Working more is more tedious. It's more inconvenient. It will come with more fatigue, more soreness, a bunch of sensations that don't mean anything. All of which, by the way, are negative things. But it's not harder work where it matters. If I'm of the assumption that the hardest work needs to be allocated to your training and the most precision, you're going to be able to do way more of that if you're just getting a general step count on the back end, because you don't have to put out a lot of effort to get a general step count most of the time, unless the steps are super high. But my clients very rarely ever go above like 14,000 steps, even the deepest part of prep. So it's pretty easy to pull that off, right? You don't have to put a lot of effort towards that, which leaves a lot more energy output availability for the training where it actually matters. And in doing that, you have more ability to recover because you don't have to train as much to get the same amount out of it. You don't have to kill yourself on the cardio. So recovery is much easier. Stress, cortisol, much lower. Sleep quality, much higher. Soreness, much lower. Inflammation, much lower. Digestive stress, much lower. Nutrient absorption as a result of less digestive stress, much better. So you can see how all of this stuff compounds and becomes incredibly powerful by doing less shit. So many bodybuilders, almost all bodybuilders are doing so much stuff, and they take so much pride in it because it's hard and very few people are willing to do it. And I get that. But because you're doing so much, you're causing 10 different problems to solve one. And now you gotta figure out how you're gonna solve those other 10 that you just created. So now you're way in the hole on that. And the output, what you actually get, the outcome, I should say, is nowhere near as good. I think bodybuilders could get infinitely better at the local level, the national level, the people who are not the genetic elite. The genetic elite are going to look like the genetic elite. I'm not saying that we've maxed out the human potential with the genetic elite, but it's pretty fucking close. I mean, how much bigger and better are bodybuilders today than they were 20, 30 years ago? Not really, not hardly at all. It's that purely is just comes kind of down to genetics more than anything. So the genetic elite, we don't need to think about them. Admire them. They're amazing. They're the most entertaining. If I'm going to watch a bodybuilding show, I would prefer that it be the Olympia over any other show, right? Because it's the best, it's the most impressive, etc. But when you're trying to learn how to do what you need to do to be the best that you can be, those guys are irrelevant to you. They have nothing in common with you. If you do what they do, chances are you're not going to get anywhere near the result that they do. So you need to optimize. And that's my specialty. Optimization. It is less work. It's way less work. It's just hard as fuck work where it matters and pulling way back in the areas that don't. Which is the reason why you're able to put harder work where it actually matters. So again, this is not about making things easy. It's about allocating the hard to the areas that need to be hard and recovery and relaxation on the back end of that, because that cascades into a lot of benefit that very few bodybuilders are seeing. 90% of probably above 90% of bodybuilders of any category, male, female, anything from fit model all the way up to men's open bodybuilding, a lot of people are just running themselves into the ground and causing all kinds of issues that are underlying that, again, don't show up. Like if you have poor digestion, that doesn't necessarily show up on a transformation photo or a progress photo. If you have really high stress, that doesn't show up on a progress photo. Stress, both neurological, emotional, physical, etc. There's various different types of stress that people are putting themselves under that aren't benefiting them. Lack of sleep is not going to show up on a transformation photo, etc. Indirectly, it does, and that's what most people are doing there. And again, here's the coaching workaround. The general coaching workaround, when people have exhausted everything that they can do, I've got you in a calorie deficit. with your chicken and rice diet. I've got you doing shitloads of cardio on the Stairmaster every day. So we got lots of calories being burned in these cardio sessions. We've like maxed out probably more than maxed out your recoverable volume with your training. Nothing else is happening. We've hit a stalemate again because digestion's poor, nutrient absorption's poor, inflammation's high, stress is really high, sleep quality sucks, etc. All these things that again don't show up in photos. And what's the workaround? Drugs, increased doses. You're not losing fat on 7 days a week of an hour plus Stairmaster cardio. Well, more Clen, more T3, Retta. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. I think using them as a tool where necessary is the right move. And if that's as far as your understanding of physiology really goes, then that would be the answer. I don't know what else to do, so do more drugs. You're not building enough muscle on this 6-day-a-week training program where it's, 7-8 different exercises per workout. Well, up the dose of test. You're on four units of growth. Let's make it 8. Let's throw insulin in twice a day. That's the answer, right? It's not the answer, but that's what's being used as the answer. That's how coaching is now. And it's not, shouldn't even say now, that's kind of how it's always been. But after years in the industry and tons of self-education, experience, learning from that experience, tracking things, keeping data on it, talking to clients beyond just what's your weight this week and what do your pictures look like this week, you start to learn that there's a lot more that you could be doing to elicit results. And the fucking craziest part about it is 9 out of 10 times the answer is do less of something. Doing less of something that's not really an important factor, an important lever to pull, allows you to push harder or pull harder on the lever that is important. And again, everyone's just trying to pull every lever as hard as they possibly can. And that's just not how it works. It's just not how it works. And so again, my messaging is always to the genetically good, not super great. Again, certainly don't want to deter the genetically elite from working with me because this applies to them too. It's just that if they don't do this kind of stuff, there's not really going to be many consequences because everything that those people do is going to work. But people with good genetics and anything below, and I mean literally anything below, lifestyle, I work with some people with, type 2 diabetes or PCOS or both that are morbidly obese that are just need to prevent themselves from fucking dying, essentially. I work with everything from that all the way up to elite caliber competitors, but my messaging is to everybody below the elite caliber genetically gifted people, because it's so much more relevant to them. It's so much more important for them to optimize everything, right? And to be clear, you can't get everything perfect. That's a misnomer. That's not a thing. We don't live in a perfect world. You can't get everything perfect all the time. But the objective is to get as many things perfect as you can. And in order to do things perfectly, you're going to have to do some things a lot less. And it's going to benefit you substantially more to do a lot less of some things. So, yeah, and it literally, probably the most underrated component of it, I haven't even talked about yet. The most underrated component of it all is food item selection. I'm a very big believer, I shouldn't even say a believer. Thermodynamics is a non-negotiable. We're all familiar with Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, despite his best efforts, is of course not able to disprove thermodynamics. Calories in versus calories out, whether you want it to exist or not, totally exist. I'm a firm believer in that. Any foods that you can eat, so long as they fit within the macros and the calories that you need to get the results that you want, are going to elicit that result. However, stuff on the back end can be affected to where your energy calorie output is diminished. And that's where people are missing the boat. Food items that are actually implemented in your plan can have a big impact on that. So I'm definitely not one to say just eat as much processed food as you want and expect to get the best results possible, even if as long as they fit within your calories. I'm definitely not saying that, because if you're doing that, satiety is going to be really high. And if that's the case, cortisol is probably going to be really high. Inflammation is probably going to be really high. Recovery is probably going to be impaired due to that inflammation. Sleep quality is probably going to be impaired due to that elevated stress. Sleep quality is impaired. Recovery is impaired. So there's all these little back end issues that start happening if you're not selective with the food, the actual specific foods that you're eating. So while I'm a big believer, which feels so hilarious to even say out loud, a big believer in thermodynamics, calories in versus calories out, the actual food items that you're consuming matter a lot, which is why those are taken heavily into consideration working with clients, because your energy output can be radically affected by it. and the way you feel, just the way you feel in general. Satiety is one of the biggest ones. Like that's probably the two things that you hear people complain about most when it comes to nutrition: variety, satiety. Variety meaning if I'm just eating chicken, broccoli, and rice every day, I have no motivation to do this. This is miserable. I can only sustain this for a brief period of time before I want to go crazy. You're just waiting for your coach to give you a cheat meal, and you celebrate that cheat meal like it's the best day of your life. Okay, and then the same thing with satiety. If you're in a really deep calorie deficit, or maybe not even that deep of a calorie deficit, but utilizing foods that are very low volume, you're going to be fucking starving all the time. And does that have like a super big impact on the actual outcome? Not necessarily if you're able to like fight through it. But if you're that hungry all the time, your cortisol is going to increase over time. And if your cortisol is increased over time, you're going to have trouble sleeping. And so all these other issues start to arise. So the food items that you're consuming need to be taken heavily into consideration too. And it's not always as obvious as people think. If you're having digestive stress, it might not just be more fiber. Even if it is, what is it, more soluble fiber or is it more insoluble fiber? Do we even know which is which? You know what I'm saying? So that's where like this coaching thing, man, it's just everybody wants to do it because it's a cool job. You work for yourself. If you're good enough at marketing, you can make a lot of money doing it. But it's not an easy job. 99% of people doing it are not really very qualified to do it. And that's another thing, not that I really like to talk too much about pricing and money or whatever, but like there are people who sometimes see my prices and think, wow, that's a lot. That's more than I was expecting. That's a lot of money. Holy shit. And it's like, right, but compared to what? And if the answer is one of these chicken, broccoli, rice repeat coaches, then yeah, of course I charge more. They don't know what they're doing. Like I'm solving 50 problems for you. They're attempting to solve one, and they're giving it to you in the packaged in the most difficult way possible for you to even solve that one. I'm going to help you solve that one really easily, and I'm going to solve like 50 other problems in the process. As a matter of fact, me solving those 50 problems on the back end are probably going to make that one that you're really focused on a lot easier to achieve, right? And again, when I say don't let the word easy mislead you, it's hard work. It's just efficiently hard work. It's hard work where the hard work should be and easy where the easy should be. If all you're doing is hard everything so that you can victimize yourself and brag about waking up at 4 a.m. to do your fasted cardio on the Stairmaster at the gym, and all I eat is plain egg whites with ketchup and chicken and broccoli for lunch and chicken and brown rice for dinner, I look at that and I'm like, cool, commendable. You're working 80 hours a week and you're getting paid for 40. My clients are working 40 hours a week and getting paid for 60. My clients are making more money and working way less than you. And the work that they're doing is much harder than the work that you're doing in those areas where it actually matters. Not because they have more fortitude or they're tougher, but because they're capable of it, because they're not overexerting themselves in the idiotic areas where most people are. So that's what it really comes down to. Like when people ask me to compare my coaching to everyone else's or not that anyone's ever legitimately asked me to justify my prices being a little higher than what, they're paying other coaches. But if they were, that would be my answer. Is, I'm going to more efficiently get you the results that you want. It's going to be a much more enjoyable process. The results are actually going to be better, despite the fact that you will have to do less shit. You won't get to go on social media and victimize yourself and tell everyone how hard everything you did was. My clients are generally, during prep, even deep in prep, constantly messaging me like, is this enough? Are you sure? Like, I just feel like I feel like I should feel worse right now. I feel like I should feel more fatigued. I feel like I should be more tired. I should hurt more. I'm not even sore. What gives? And I'm like, what do you look like though? I'm like, well, I mean, the best I've ever looked. I'm like, okay, then we're good. That's the point, right? The point is not to be the hardest worker in the room. The point is to work really hard where it's necessary and win. The judges don't sit there and interview each competitor and ask how much cardio they did or how hard their diet was to follow. They look at who looks the best. I'm going to give you the path to look the best that you're capable of looking, and you can let everyone else outwork you because out of necessity, because that's what they're being told, but you're just going to beat them with a lot less work. And that's, again, not to say that your work wasn't your work's still going to be harder than theirs because you're capable of doing the hard work, because we're not wasting energy on dumb shit. And by the way, the reason everyone of these coaches are prescribing hard work on the dumb shit is because that's what they did. And they don't want to come to terms with the fact that I did a bunch of useless work that I didn't need to do. They don't want to come to terms with, I could have actually had better results if I would have done things differently back then. And then the other thing is, they're afraid of criticism from the coaches who already do that stuff. So in other words, what you get is an entire industry full of coaches that are all doing the same things and all comparing themselves to each other and all getting relatively similar results based on the genetics and the adherence of those clients. But the biggest thing is they're relying on extreme adherence to extremely difficult plans. And we know how humans are. 9 out of 10, if it's an extremely difficult plan, the adherence is probably going to be low. So all I'm doing is creating a system that makes adherence really high, because it's not hard to adhere to it. You get to do really, really fucking hard work on the important stuff. And then you get to relax on the stuff that is actually going to benefit you if you just relax on it, which will make the hard work possible. So that's the efficiency model. Like, that's just how it is. Like, that's the simplicity that this actually can be. You know, we've watched bodybuilders for decades and decades just overwork themselves for results that actually would have been better had they done less. Again, doesn't mean that the work that they would have had to do would have been any easier. It's just that the work would be efficient because it's being done in the right areas. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents with it all. So anyway, I guess that's really all I got for today. I just wanted to get on my soapbox a little bit on that specific topic, and that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for tuning in.